I used to imagine what it would be like, stepping onto American soil for the first time. I thought I would feel small, overwhelmed, maybe even out of place. But when I walked out of Phoenix Airport with my suitcase rolling behind me, I didn't feel any of that. I felt one thing. I was getting closer to him. Mason. For almost 3 years, he had existed only through my screen. Late-night calls, endless voice notes, terrible selfies he'd send to make me laugh, videos of the horses he cared for, and messages that somehow always arrived exactly when I needed them. We had never said it out loud, not exactly, but something real had lived quietly between us, something neither of us was brave enough to name. Until today. The drive from the airport to the ranch felt unreal. I kept watching the desert pass by, wide, open, endless. In Saudi Arabia, everything always felt structured, shaped, built intentionally. Here, the world looked like it was left as it was meant to be, rough, unpolished, honest. Maybe that was why he loved it so much. By the time the car turned onto the dirt road leading to the ranch, my heartbeat was louder than the engine. I gripped the handle on the door as the house came into view, wooden, sun-faded, exactly like he'd shown me in photos. But seeing it in real life was different. Seeing him in real life, that was something else entirely. He stood on the porch steps, worn jeans, dusty boots, the sun catching in his hair like gold. His hands were on his hips at first, like he wasn't sure what to do with them. Then he dropped them slowly, staring at me like the world had stopped moving. I froze beside the car door. For a moment, neither of us moved. "You?" he finally said, voice soft, unbelieving. I swallowed. He breathed out a shaky laugh and walked toward me, hesitant, like he was afraid I might disappear. I stepped closer too, and then, suddenly, he was right in front of me, so close I could see the tiny flecks of hazel in his green eyes. "You actually came," he murmured, awe slipping into his voice. "I told you I would," I said, trying not to let my nerves show. He smiled. God, that smile. The exact one from all our calls, but warmer now, real, so close I could feel it. "I don't know if I'm supposed to hug you or," he started. Before he could finish, I wrapped my arms around him. He stiffened for half a second, then melted against me, his hand sliding to my back. He smelled like cedar, sun, and a hint of sweat from working outside. His heartbeat pressed against my chest. It felt like coming home to a place I'd never been. When we finally pulled back, his cheeks were flushed. "Okay," he breathed. I asked. "No," he said quietly. He grabbed my suitcase, insisting he'd take it, even though I told him I could handle it. That was Mason, gentle in his own stubborn way. Inside, the house was cooler, shaded, with old photographs lining the walls and the faint smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen. "It looks the same as the photos," I said, taking it in. "Yeah," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's not much, but—" "It's beautiful," I interrupted. He flushed again. I was starting to really enjoy making him do that. We had lunch at the kitchen island, leftover stew he reheated on the stove. He moved around the kitchen like he was nervous to stand still, like if he stopped moving, the feelings between us would spill onto the floor and he wouldn't know how to pick them up. "So," he said between bites, "you traveled across the world just to visit Arizona?" I raised an eyebrow. His eyes flicked to mine. "You," I said simply. His spoon paused in the air. For a moment, he didn't blink. Then he looked away, smiling to himself like he wasn't allowed to smile too big. "You can't just say things like that," he murmured. His breath came out slow. "Rami." There it was again, the quiet, warm gravity between us, the kind that made my chest feel too small for my heart. He never finished the sentence, but he didn't need to. I woke early the next morning, jet lag pulling me out of sleep before sunrise. I wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and stepped outside onto the porch. The sky was still dark, but a soft line of gold stretched across the horizon. The desert looked enormous, endless. I felt like I could breathe deeper here than anywhere else in the world. I heard his footsteps before I saw him. "You're up early," Mason said softly, joining me at the railing. I shook my head lightly. "9?" he asked, studying my face. "No." He nodded slowly. "Yeah." When I turned my head toward him, he was already looking at me, really looking. His eyes lingered, not shy this time, not nervous, just gentle. The air tightened between us, warm and heavy with everything we hadn't said. He looked away first, just like yesterday, just like always. In the afternoon, he took me out to the canyon. "There's a place my dad used to take me," he said, driving down a rough dirt road. I watched him while he drove, his hands on the wheel, the sun brushing his hair, the line of his jaw. I had seen him thousands of times through a screen, but this, being close enough to study every detail, it hit different, deeper. We parked near a ridge overlooking the valley. The air was warm, wind carrying the smell of sage and dust. Mason stepped ahead, hands in his pockets, staring out at the land stretching below. "My dad brought me here whenever life felt too loud," he said quietly. I didn't interrupt. I let him talk. "Why?" he asked. He looked at me, eyes steady. Something inside me trembled. We sat on a flat rock, the sun warming our backs, wind brushing our hair. For a moment, we didn't speak. "You," he whispered. My own breath caught. The words hit me so hard I had to close my eyes for a second. When I opened them, he was still looking at me. Open, vulnerable, honest. I reached for his hand, slowly, giving him time to pull away. He didn't. Our fingers threaded together, fitting in a way that felt natural, inevitable. He exhaled shakily. "Don't let go," he whispered. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, and I meant it. When we got back to the ranch, something had shifted. We didn't talk about it, but we didn't need to. He walked closer than before. His shoulder brushed mine more often. Once, in the kitchen, he reached past me for a cup, and his chest brushed my back. He froze, breath caught. I didn't move. He didn't either. Then he whispered, "Rami." My name and his voice did something to me, something deep. That night, we sat on the porch again. The stars above us were so bright, they looked painted on. Mason leaned closer, like he didn't even realize he was doing it, until his knee touched mine. "I don't want this to end when you leave," he said. He turned toward me fully. The moonlight softened every line of his face. "I'm choosing you, not by accident, not because you came all this way, because I want you." My chest tightened, full, almost aching. "Then choose me tomorrow, and the day after that." His eyes softened. "Come here," he whispered. He lifted a hand and gently cupped my cheek. I leaned into his palm, closing my eyes for a second, letting the warmth of his touch ground me. When I opened them, he was still watching me. And then he kissed me. Soft, slow, careful, like he was afraid I might break. I kissed him back, fingers sliding to the back of his neck, pulling him closer. His breath hitched, and I felt him melt into the kiss, into me. When we finally pulled away, our foreheads stayed touching. "We'll figure this out," he murmured. "We already are," I whispered. And there, under the desert sky, with his breath warm against my lips, I felt something I had never felt before: belonging. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee drifting through the hallway. I rubbed my eyes, still replaying the kiss from last night. My lips felt warm just thinking about it. I stepped out of the guest room, my hair still messy from sleep, and walked toward the kitchen. Mason was standing by the stove, frying eggs, moving in a slow, relaxed way that told me he was in a good mood. He was barefoot, hair tousled, wearing a plain white t-shirt that looked softer than anything I owned. He looked up when he heard me. "Morning," he said, smiling a little too brightly. "Morning," I replied, trying not to grin like an idiot. He handed me a mug. "I slept," I said, taking the coffee. His face froze, eyes going wide. I raised my eyebrows, waiting for it to hit him. And then it did. He turned red, redder than I had ever seen him. I didn't, that's not, he stuttered, burying his face in his hands. I burst out laughing. Relax, Mason. He peeked at me between his fingers. Fine. He dropped his hands, still flustered. Fine. We ate breakfast together, talking about everything and nothing. He asked about my family, about the city, about what I missed most about home. He listened, really listened, like every word mattered. After we cleaned up, he said, "Come on." We walked out to the stables. Horses lifted their heads as we approached. Dust rose under our feet, and the light slanted through the wooden beams like golden stripes. "This is where I spend most of my life," he said, opening the gate. He walked up to a tall chestnut mare and stroked her neck gently. "She's beautiful," I said, reaching out slowly. "She's picky about people, but—" Mason nodded encouragingly. I placed my hand on her neck. She sniffed me, then pushed her head into my palm, warm and solid. "She likes you," Mason said, sounding relieved for a reason I couldn't understand. "I'm honored," I joked. "No, seriously," he said. "I'm not a stranger," I said quietly. He looked up, and the meaning sank in. His expression softened into something warm and deep.
"Yeah," he said. He showed me how to brush her, how to clean her hooves, how to calm her if she got nervous. At one point, I leaned too close and bumped into him accidentally. His hand instinctively caught my waist, steadying me. Neither of us moved. His fingers stayed there, warm, firm, familiar. "Sorry," I whispered. "You're not," he whispered back. He was right. I wasn't. Later, we saddled Willow and took a slow walk along the trail behind the ranch. Mason walked beside me, hand occasionally brushing my thigh when he adjusted the reins for me. "You look good on a horse," he said, glancing up at me. "You look good everywhere," I answered before thinking. His steps faltered. The way he said it, quiet, honest, made heat rush through me. We returned to the ranch just before sunset. After he put Willow back in her stall, we sat on the fence, watching the sky melt into oranges and pinks. "I like having you here," he said. "I have to," I softly. "My life is there, my work." He nodded slowly. He looked at me sharply. I breathed in deeply. He swallowed. I didn't answer with words. I reached over and slid my hand into his. He exhaled, eyes fluttering shut for a second. Then he leaned his shoulder against mine. "Will," he whispered. His thumb brushed the back of my hand gently. That night, a storm rolled in unexpectedly. Thunder cracked across the sky, and rain hammered against the windows. Mason stood by the living room lamp, watching the downpour with a small frown. "Muddy," I teased lightly. "No," he said, then hesitated. "Well." I walked over and stood beside him. He gave a small laugh. We sat on the couch. The lights flickered once, then steadied. Rain streaked down the glass, the sound filling the room with a strange comfort. Mason's shoulder brushed mine. I shook my head. "Most things worth feeling can't be controlled," I said. He turned to me, studying my face in the dim light. His hand slid slowly across the cushion until his fingers found mine. His touch was soft at first, hesitant, then firmer, intertwining our hands. We sat like that for a long time, listening to the rain, not speaking, just breathing the same air. At some point, he leaned his head on my shoulder. My hand instinctively came up, resting against his cheek, thumb brushing lightly along his skin. His breath hitched, and he leaned into the touch. "Raimi," he whispered. "It won't," I said.
He shifted closer, his legs brushing mine. I could feel the warmth of his body, the soft rise and fall of his breath. "I'm scared," he admitted. "Not of you," he clarified. I pulled him closer gently, letting him rest his forehead against my neck. His breath shook against my collarbone. I pressed my lips to his temple, soft and slow. He wrapped his arms around me, slowly, like he was memorizing the feeling of my body against his. I held him, letting the rhythm of the rain guide our breaths. We stayed like that until the storm softened. When he finally leaned back, his eyes were wet, Not from crying, but from something deeper. Something like relief. "You make me feel safe," he whispered. "You make me feel chosen," I replied. He swallowed hard. "Stay with me." I nodded. He led me to his room, slowly, like every step mattered. The lamp cast a warm glow across the blankets and the old wooden floor. The room smelled like him, cedar, soap, and something warm I could never describe. He sat on the edge of the bed first, looking up at me with a nervous smile. I stepped closer and placed my hand gently on his cheek. His eyes fluttered shut, leaning into my touch like he'd been waiting for it for years. "Mason," I whispered. He opened his eyes again, full of something raw and real. "I'm here," I said softly. He reached up and covered my hand with his own. I leaned down and kissed him. Slow, deep, full of everything words couldn't hold. His hand slid up my arms, gripping gently, pulling me closer. We didn't rush. We didn't cross lines that shouldn't be crossed. We kissed like two people who had spent years holding back and finally let themselves breathe. He pulled me down beside him, and we lay there facing each other, the world quiet except for our breath and the soft hum of the desert night outside. His forehead touched mine. His thumb brushed my jaw. His voice was barely a whisper. "You won't," I said. "Not after this." His eyes softened. He exhaled slowly, his smile small but full of relief. Then he pulled me against him, my head on his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath my ear. I wrapped my arm around him, and he held me tighter, like he was protecting something precious. Maybe he was. Maybe we both were. As sleep pulled at us, he whispered one last thing, voice thick with emotion. I closed my eyes and held him closer. Outside, the storm faded. Inside, something new was beginning. Slow, real, honest. Something worth crossing oceans for. Something worth staying for.